Hi, this is Mrs. Kidman, and then in this video, we are going to be discussing lines and segments in circles. So let's start by talking about different segments that we see in circles. When it comes to circles, we always have our center point, which is exactly in the middle of our circle, equidistant from all of the sides. Now, from that center point to the other side, we have different segments that cut through circles with different names. First, if I go from one side of my circle through the center point to another side of my circle, that line is called the diameter. Okay, so it goes all the way across our circle. And we found that the relationship between the diameter of a circle and the circumference around the outside, that proportion is actually pi, which is so awesome. Don't we just all love pi? So that is the diameter of a circle. That is something you've probably heard before. Another component or segment in our circle goes from the center point to the outside, and that is called the radius. Now, the relationship between the radius and the diameter is that the diameter is 2 times the length of the radius, or the diameter is equal to 2 radii is what it's called, right? That's the plural of radius, or 2 times the radius is what our diameter is. The last thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to segments in circles is something called a chord. So a chord in a circle goes from one part of the circle to another without going through the middle of the circle. So technically, a diameter is a special type of chord, but a chord is just a line that goes from one part of the circle to the other. Okay, so it just goes from one side of our circle to the other, but it is not going through that center point, and that there are segments in circles. So once we have segments, we also have lines that are compared to circles. So when it comes to a line that goes through a circle, there are kind of 2 lines that we care about here with circles. The first line that we care about is actually called a secant line. And now a secant line is related to a chord because it's like a chord in the sense that it doesn't have to go through the center. But what it does is a secant line goes through the circle in 2 places. So this is considered a secant line. This would be considered a secant line. This would be considered a secant line. A secant line in a triangle is just a line that goes through 2 places in our circle. Now, in addition to the secant line, we also have a line that we care about called the tangent line. So a tangent line is a line that only touches the circle once. Let me get a straight line here so that we can see this. We'll make it green. So a tangent line is a line that only touches our circle once. Do you see how this line only touches it once? And that location where it touches it, right here, is called the point of tangency. Point of tangency. And that point of tangency, as described before, just means that that's the point where it touches our circle. And this here is our tangent line. And a tangent just touches at one place. So that is kind of some ideas of lines and segments in circles. So let's go through one quick example here where we decide whether the piece that they're talking about, the line, segment, array, is a radius, a chord, a diameter, a secant, or a tangent of this circle C. Please note this notation here that we haven't seen before. This represents circle C, that circle with a dot in the middle. If we just had a circle, it could be confused with an O or a 0. So the circle with a dot in the middle means that it's a circle, and it's named after that point in the center. That's how we kind of name a circle there. So let's look at these different values. We've got segment AC. So if we're talking about segment AC, I'm going to highlight it in green here. We're talking about this piece. So it goes from the center of our circle to the outside. Well, that is going to be a radius, because the radius is defined as going from the center of the circle to the outside of it. Then we have segment AB. So segment AB, I'm going to do in purple here, A to B. That one would be the diameter. And the reason why it's the diameter is because it goes from one side of the circle to the other through that midpoint on our circle. Next, we have the ray DE. And so we're looking at this right here. It's highlighted in blue there. That line DE, notice how it only touches our circle once at that point B. So B would be our point of tangency, and DE, if it goes through that point, is our tangent line. And then the last one that we have here that I'm going to highlight in yellow, we are talking about AE, which is this piece here. Now that line, notice how it goes through the circle twice, and it's a line. So this one is going to be that secant. line. So that is how we can tell what types of lines those are. Now, it's so cool to know about tangent lines, chords, diameters, radii, because what they do is they actually tell us a lot of information about our circle. Depending on where the tangent is, it has a relationship between other circles that we can use. We can determine whether or not a line is actually truly a tangent, depending on the way that it interacts with the radius. It's so awesome. So please check out the next videos in which we talk about tangent lines between two circles. We will talk about tangents and how they relate to the radius of a circle. And we will talk about some other properties when it comes to circles. So please check out the next videos in which we go over these cool things about circles.